I've been throwing a lot of notes on paper because I think I'd like to develop a recruiting PowerPoint as well, do a session on that.
Yep. Yeah, we
But
need. Go ahead.
I'm also going to wait until the Dallas conference when I can hopefully, get together with the other PSO HRs from across the country and ask for their comments of,
Yeah.
what would they like to see?
You guys gotta go, okay? I'm gonna jump to another meeting. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
YouTube is
Hey,
live. There are 24 participants now. Bye.
great. Thanks a lot. I've gotten a request to do a, a, a presentation or develop one on recruiting, and we have one on recruiting, but what this guy's looking for is how to actually do the recruiting. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Okay.
And the other thing I got asked for is for a presentation aimed at prospects themselves, like because we're usually one step removed. We're talking to our HR people,
Right.
so they could use it at a Rotary meeting or you know VFW or whatever group they're talking to. You know, because usually those groups, we have some cross pollination with them.
Yeah. And then we have that, the mentoring PowerPoint that, um, um, I can't think of her name right now.
Oh, Beverly Hannibal.
Beverly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll probably incorporate that, either in its entirety or slightly revised into our, package of sessions here.
Yep.
Okay. Would she be the presenter on that, or would we end up doing that?
It really depends on the content that we come up with, but she does a great job. But we might want to maybe have more than one presenter. There's some other
Okay.
good stuff about. There's a guide, mentoring guide that's pretty helpful, and
Hmm.
we need to kind of put some flesh on the bones. Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Dwayne Rose. I'm a division chief for the H Directorate for Recruiting and Retention. One of the ways we can help meet our objectives to get new and retain current members is to offer training that will support the knowledge that our HR team in the auxiliary needs, and that's why we're here. Today's training is on critical forms, including the Form 7035, which is going to be very active in the coming months. We just completed a series of presentations on the best practices and also the new member application. Hopefully you were able to be in that presentation, but it is also, if you use that same link, you can go back and watch that presentation again, or whatever part you would like to see again or missed. So this is the very first presentation for our critical forms topic, and I'm glad you're with us. There will be a third topic when this one is complete for all three of our districts, regions, and it'll be about onboarding new members. But we wanted to get the critical forms out as soon as we could when it's the most useful. As I mentioned, because of all the time zones we have, we've grouped our auxiliary districts into an Eastern, a Central, and Pacific region, so we don't spread out too thin on the time codes and make it too difficult. And I do like to mention, we are using YouTube. Some of our sessions we're doing have too many members to be supported by Zoom. And also, when you get too many people on Zoom, it gets a little hectic because it's hard to keep everybody muted and it's hard to have an interaction. We apologize for not having the interaction, but this enables us to get our training out as quickly as possible. And so that's why we're using it. In the YouTube, you will see a topic description, and below it, below the presentation screen, the last sentence includes a link to a form you can use to submit questions, and we'll mention that again later. You can ask questions during the session, but you can also ask questions later, and those will be forwarded to us. And as I mentioned, this presentation will be recorded. The same link you used to access the session will take you to it again. But if you're, have any problems with the form or don't want to use the form, you can also email me, and my email will be at the end of this presentation, and Rio's will be there as well. But let's get underway. Your presenter is Rio Annis. He is a branch chief in the H Directorate in my division. He's also a division commander, a DSOHR, SOHR, FSOHR, and also he's an FSO Marine Safety in case he gets bored. I share these same offices with him except for the last one. So as you can see, we really, he does a great job with these presentations, and we're thankful he's squeezing us in, but he has a lot on his plate. So let's get underway. And again, welcome.
Moment here, share screen. Little wheel spinning. Okay, Dwayne, can you see that up there now?
Yep, looks great.
All right, good. All right, welcome everybody to our session here on critical forms, and hope you get some useful information out of it. So processing critical forms to support auxiliary and member needs. Does it matter? Yep, really does, a lot. The better we can understand how the forms are to be filled out, the better that the processing goes with, DIROCs on that, and things can be done in an efficient manner and not have anything being held up. So for the critical form success, it's efficiently and correctly accomplishing what's needed for the member and for the auxiliary. Especially, it's not so much disenrollment. That doesn't help the auxiliary, obviously, but, transferring, we want to make sure that that goes smoothly, for the auxiliary member. So, the HR position, that is one of the most valuable positions, of all other bridge staff. Without HR, there's no members. We are really mission critical. We handle a lot with, new people coming in and then continuing to work with them, throughout their service. And we try to take care of, all of their needs, whatever it might be. And we're always going to be kind of that go-to person, whatever it might be. And, even if it isn't something in our particular, function that we, are experienced at least we can help them, direct them to the proper assistance. We don't want to really ever not be helpful. We always want to be there for them. Just, remember, we are Team Coast Guard, separate apparatus. So presentation note here. The content of this training is to promote efficient and correct nationwide standard practices throughout all the flotillas, across our country here for the tasks that we commonly perform. It's also intended to offer district HR officers basic vetted training materials for new officers, HR and even flotilla commanders or vice commanders, or to refresh, current ones so that they don't have to create, new ideas. This material can be used over, in any area. However, we do understand that there might be some differences between districts and DIROCs and how they, handle certain situations. It'd be some of those nuances. But moreover, you'll see that this is a basic guideline that should be followed under most circumstances. And if you do have any questions at all, be sure that you do check with your chain of leadership for direction. So what we're going to cover is the 7035 form, and that's the form that handles things like dues notices or disenrollment for non-payment of dues, retirement from the auxiliary, transfer to another flotilla, voluntary disenrollment, and death of a member. And then we will go into the 7056, that's the transfer request form, and we'll talk about both areas, whether it's a transfer within the same district or a transfer in or out, to a different district. And then we will cover the 7028 member change of information. And it could be something as simple as, an email address or an address or something like that. So important forms tip, on the critical forms. Read and refer to the instructions, both in the forms and provided separately at the end. You cannot backdate a change. You might post-date with agreement with your DIROCs. Always complete all relevant information and get a signature where indicated. If there are mistakes, there's going to be delays. It's going to cost us time, and we might not achieve the disenrollment in the desired calendar year. And that does cost money for the flotilla. So if you're not sure about anything, make sure you ask questions as often as needed. Always ask for help. Don't guess on it. There's plenty of help going up your chain, whether you go directly through the HR chain as an HR officer for informational purposes, or you need to go through your elected chain to get guidance on, procedure. So where do you go to find these forms? Always go to the forms warehouse, and you'll find, each of these forms here. You have the 7028, and I do recognize that people can make changes and off-date it too, but here's where you could find the form. And then the 7035 change of membership and the 7056. So here's the 7035 change of membership status This is how it'll appear. So there's different sections in here to be completed. First section be flotilla commander, starting the form, and then you have section 2 to be completed by the member if this is something that they are involved with, at their request. And then section 3 is basically completed by the flotilla commander, at the end of processing of whatever the request might be. And then it goes on to the DSOHR at that point to finish it up and get it on its way to DIROCS. Again, as I mentioned before, there's instructions. So once you pull up the 7035 form, page 2 of that form actually has the instructions. And we enlarged it a little bit here so you could see it on the, PowerPoint. And there's plenty of instructions here on what you need to put in each box. And I'll have examples in succeeding slides here, show you how a particular form would be filled out based on the situation. Again, the lower section of the instructions here in a large view. So basically, on any change of membership, the 7035 form, always, as I said, you go to the forms warehouse, and there you will get the most current form. And right now, we're working with the 0924 form. And on all 7035s, you have to start out by providing the member's name and their ID number. I do occasionally see some come through to me without that in there. It's like, okay, now I have to wonder, who are we dealing with? Some people jump to section 2 right away. So we start out with that no matter what the circumstance is. If it's a dues issue and you had no contact, then the flotilla commander needs to document, attempts to contact that member. And in this case, if this is a dues issue, then the flotilla commander would be filling out some more information in section 1 here, which includes the year and the amount. And again, if this is not a dues issue, then you'd skip this information because it's not relevant. And always sign and date the 7035. That starts the clock on the 30-day notice to pay. Does your district have a dues timeline? It really should. I know in 9 Central we do. It's been there with us for a few years now. And it's a good way to, keep on track with when you have to get things done so that you're not backed up against the clock at the tail end of the year trying to get things done. So you need to get your bills dues billing out to all members as early as possible. Suggestion here is, August 1st. Then at September 1st, if you have some people who still not paid the dues, you then need to follow up on that and get, maybe take some other attempts at contacting this person. You cannot rely solely on email. You really need to make a phone call, send text messages, try something. And hopefully you're not running into a situation where you've not had contact with this person all year long, because now you're up against the clock on it. October 1st. Now is when you need to send that 7035 out, completed by a flotilla commander, and mailed to a member via certified mail or priority mail requesting a signature. This is their official notice to pay dues. And if they've not paid in 30 days, then they will be put in for disenrollment. So now you get to the November 1st date. You've not had any response. We have no idea what's going on with the person, but they obviously are not communicating with us. So now you can finish up your 7035 for disenrollment for non-payment of dues. In our district, these 7035 forms, no matter what the situation is, need to be to the DSOHR by November 15th. This way it provides enough time to make sure that these forms are all correct and there's nothing needs to be changed or corrected on them. And then by December 1st, the DSOHR, me, gets these on the way to DIROC so they can be processed. So there's more than enough time that these will be processed by the end of the year. And we have a guarantee that if we get them in by that December 1st date, that if they happen to process later than the first of the year, we're not going to get billed for that. So if you're at the tail end of the year and you're trying to rush this through, it is potential you might be billed for this member if this processing happens after the first of the year. Remember, this timeline only works if flotillas stay on schedule. Starting sooner is not a bad idea. Does your district or flotilla consistently use a timeline? Well, when you do follow a dues timeline, it'll provide consistent process for all flotillas. Everybody would be on the same page with that, working on the same calendar. It communicates what has to happen and when. It ensures sufficient contact attempts made, documents each step in contact, and it allows your 735 to be processed before year end and appropriate members disenroll. And ensures flotilla does not charge for members. Sometimes we even in our flotilla, and it's it's just something that we do, we start talking about dues even in July. At our meeting in July, we'll say dues notices will be going out, in this next month, August. So in a 7035 member change, the section 2, there's different options here. So it could be, a member paying their outstanding dues, they actually responded. It could be retirement, could be transferred to another flotilla. And in this case, make sure that you are then also submitting the 7056. So the 7035 and 7056 should be submitted together on a transfer. Voluntary disenrollment. There are drop-down boxes on this form, when you're using the PDF version, so they have the option to use those, or they can at least, write in their own words what their reason is. And you need to include ID card if possible, and make a note if it's not returned, indicate why. And this section here, this must be signed by the member. So any change that they are requesting to be made, they need to sign this, indicating that's their choice. So here's a section by section 2 to be completed by the member again. Now again, if it's retirement, qualified after 15 years of service. So we should verify the date of employment, enrollment, when we get these forms. Sometimes this is filled in by the member themselves, but we should verify that. And then depending on what district or DIROCs you're in, there's different procedures or methods for recognizing the member's retirement. So they could submit, the DIROCs may send out a certificate, a PIN, an ID card indicating retirement. So you might want to check with your DSOHR or DIROCs for your district protocol on that. If it's a situation where there's a death of a member, we want to get the date if possible, and then the name and the address next to PIN. And in the section 3, when it's to the DSOHR, in my district, just writing in 091 for 9th Central is sufficient, but it could be the DSOHR's name. If there's no particular exact answer on that. Verify with your DSO whether the DCDR, the division commander's signature, is needed. In 9 Central, that's option, and we don't need it, but it might be in your district. So definitely check on that. However, I would suggest that when you are in a flotilla and you're working with these forms and you're submitting them up the chain, copy your division commander. They should be aware of what's going on when you're losing members. whether it's a retirement, a death, or a transfer. We want to keep them in the loop. So here's a non-payment of dues situation. This is how the form should be filled out. We're always going to have the member's name at the top with their identification number, their enrollment ID number. You'll have the year, and this is for the next year. These are the dues that they are evidently not going to pay, and they've had no contact with us. You'll have the dues amount. You'll have a flotilla commander's name and his date here, which I put in as 10/1/25. This is a date of notice. That means we are also mailing this form. You could submit it with your, maybe you have an email version of the dues notice that you send out to all members. You could print that out as well, because if they missed an email, they get this letter in the mail, they have this additional email with the information of how to pay the dues and who to mail it to. So this is what gets sent out to the member. So now if the member's not responded to us, we should then fill out section 2. And basically in this section, you're only going to have a flotilla number because there's nothing else relevant to this situation. Section 3 now, you're getting ready to send this to your DSO HR. You need to check the box for recommended disenrollment date. And in here I used November 15th because that's when it should make it to the DSO HR. And then you check the box for non-payment of financial obligations. I generally write in no response from all communications attempts and see attached email. And that way, the email that I'm getting from my HR people, FSO HRs that are initially handling this, in their email, they should have a timeline of what attempts they've made. And so this will go with the 7035 2 GIROPS when it goes there for processing. So then we'll have a flotilla commander signature and their date of 11/1, because that's when they started the process. And as we mentioned earlier, when you send out this notice, that dated October 1st, you should send it with return receipt requested. You don't have to get it, but you have to try. But it's nice that you can verify that this actually made it to their residence and that somebody signed for it. So they had official notice. So they can't come back and say that they were never notified and why was I disenrolled. Our next situation here is a member requested disenrollment. So basically we have the same upper section filled out here with the member's name and their ID number. We don't have to fill out anything else in section 1 because it's not a dues situation. The member's actually telling us that they want to disenroll. So we have to fill out the flotilla number and the date whenever they notified us. I just put 11/1, but it can be whatever date. Any time of the year, a member can elect to disenroll. So then they have to check the box, that they desire to disenroll, and if they can, write in a reason here. And they can also use the drop-down box if they wish to. You have to check the box about retrieving their ID card. Or we need to have some sort of a note that their card was lost or they never received one. Maybe they were one of those members that were in AP status and never was issued an ID card. So we need to make some sort of a note there if you did not actually get that ID card. And then the member has to sign this form. This is their request. So they're verifying this is what they want done. Next, section 3 filled out similarly. We have to have the DSO HR, whether it's the name or the district number. Check the box for recommended disenrollment date. Again, this does not have to be 11/15, as maybe this request came in earlier in the year. But if it's at the end of the year, based on our dues notices, then you could use the 11/15 date. So this is when it has to be to your DSO HR. And we also check the box for at members' request. Flotilla commander will sign it, and they can date it, and you're all set here. Send that on to DIROCS. We have a member requested retirement situation. Again, section 1, you need to have the member's name and their ID number. Section 2, flotilla number and the date. Again, that's flexible, but if you're at the end of the year, we got to be working this when the dues are supposed to be in. They have to check the box that they desire to retire. Their enrollment date. Well, you'll need to verify this, that this is actually, at least 15 years of service. We also, again, in this situation, check to retrieve that identification card, or you have some other kind of note down here that indicates why it was not retrieved. And again, the member has to sign this. This is their request. This will be filled out again for the DSOHR, whatever district that might be, or their name. And then you can see we have one box down here for the member desires and is eligible for retired member status. So you check that box. Flotilla commander will sign this again and date it. Now, what I do in my district, because I know my district does send out retirement certificates, and I think a PIN as well, I put a note on here for my DIROCS as a reminder. This is what I would like them to do. I just feel if I don't do that, they might process it and not, think about it in some cases if they're really busy. So this is my request on here. You may have different situations in your own district working with your DIROCS. So again, we try to get the ID back. Occasionally, it's never issued, as I mentioned. Maybe they never submitted to get an ID card, or maybe they were in AP status, or they never renewed it. If retrieved, you return it with a 7035 copy to the DSOHR, or destroy it and write that prominently on the 7035. Section 3 box should be checked. In my District 9 CR, I don't need everybody to send me the ID card, so then I have to shred them. I'm happy if they take care of it. I trust that they will be destroying it on their end, and they don't then need to mail it to me. If not retrieved from the member, again, we need to prominently, note this, that you tried, but you weren't able to get it. Here's a situation for death of a member. Again, we have to have the name, employee ID number at the top. Section 2, not only do we have a flotilla number, but we're going to have a date here of when were we notified of the member's death. And then otherwise, you skip this section. Nothing else needs to be recorded there. Then down in section 3 here, before you send it on to your DSOHR, you fill in the box of who you're sending it to, whether you put in the district number or that person's name. You'll have a box to check here for death of member. If you have a date of death, that would be nice that you would record it here. But that's, if that was provided to you. And then also what we would like to have is the name and address of the next of kin. At least my DIROCS, and I'm sure that they may all do the same. They may send a letter of condolences out recognizing, the member and their service to the auxiliary. So if you can get a name and an address in here, that would really be great. And then the flotilla commander would sign this and would also date this. Now, as a note to DSOHRs who might be on this call or get this training, at my level, when I send this to DIROCS, I also copy another member who handles the recognition of member deaths, because at our D-trains on the last day of the training conference, we recognize those who cross the bar. So they can only do that if they know. So that's why at my level in 9CR, I make sure that they have, a copy of this form. So now we have a member transfer request situation on the 735. Again, I'll repeat this. We have to have their name on here, their ID number, flotilla number, and whatever date they're making the request. And if it's at the end of the year, we got to get this done in a timely fashion. So hopefully they're telling us by November 1st, because they thought about doing this right when the dues notices came out. Hopefully they planned this earlier in the year. But then they have to check the box. I desire to transfer to whatever flotilla they want to go to. And then we also have to send in the 7056 with this form. So you have to have the member signature, because again, this is their request. They're verifying it. Next box, we're going to mark down the district we're working with and or the name of the DSOHR. And there's no other boxes down here to be completed. So then it'll be the flotilla's commander signature and a date. So we're getting to the 7056 now that would accompany that form on a transfer. And again, you go to the forms warehouse and you're getting the most current form. Right now, that is the 0323 form. And as soon as you open that form up in the forms warehouse, you're going to see this box appear. And it says before you can fill out this form, you have to, either you're electronically filling out or manually filling out, you have to check one of these two boxes, within district or out district. And that's because it changes the form based on that situation. And filling the form out manually is okay. That just means once you've changed this to whatever way you want it, whether it's within district or out district, you can print the form out and you can fill it out by hand. That's what the manually means. But otherwise, electronically is so much simpler. In my district, even electronic signatures are fine on these forms. But check with your own district and your chain of leadership to verify on that. $7056 does have instructions on page 2, and it'll help you out with filling out this form, but it can be a little complicated. There are different routings depending on what situation you're dealing with here. The revision of this form kind of left the DSOHRs out of the loop. It's not like the 7035. It does not flow that way. So we'll go through that here in a moment. So the form can be completed by the flotilla commander. If a member says, I want to transfer and I'd like to go to, this particular flotilla, you can actually start this form for them, but it does need a member signature. Some members don't understand how the forms are to be filled out, so you can help them out by doing it for them. Just get them to sign it, and then you can handle it from that point. They need to know, what you need to fill in, what flotilla they're transferring from and to. The current flotilla commander can mark it approved and forwards to the receiving flotilla commander. I know there is a box here where you could write in any kind of notes you want. I've not seen anybody check disapprove for sending a transfer on for someone who wants to go to another flotilla, but I suppose that could happen. But you'd need to write some reason in there. And then you forward this through your chain of leadership, the forms flow. And again, this can be done electronically. You can email this along, getting different people to sign off on it and then forward. So here's a sample of a form being filled out for a within district transfer. So we have to have the member's name, and it's all in one box, their last, first, middle initial. We have to have the member's signature. And then you have their ID number. You have the signature date. And then you have the effective date. Well, we don't know exactly what the effective date might be, but we can route it out at least a couple of weeks. This case here, I used the same dates based on us being at the end of the year timeline. When do we need to have this done? But again, transfers can happen any time of year. Then we have to have the flotilla they're transferring from. That's their current flotilla, and what one they want to transfer to. And notice this is in the same district. And you have to route this with your 7035 to your DSOHR. Then we have the current flotilla commander. He's going to, put his name on here, and he's going to sign it, and he will mark approved. Again, I've never seen a disapproval, but I suppose that could happen. My recommendation, and this is the way I handle it in my district, that the flotilla commander routes this straight to me, and then I manage getting the signature of the receiving flotilla commander. And there, I'm managing it, and they don't need to worry about it on their end. I've seen too many times where this kind of gets dropped, and then all of a sudden I'm getting a phone call or an email or a status check on a transfer that I knew nothing about. So I can only be helpful if I'm in the process. And plus, in my district, I kind of like to know who's coming and going and where they're going, within flotillas. And as I mentioned earlier, on these transfers or any 7035 form, you should always copy your division commander so they're aware of the activity as well. And as I said, in my district, I get the receiving flotilla commander signature on this, and then I will forward it to DIROCS to be processed. I want to try to make the process as smooth as possible for all of my HRs and flotilla commanders in my district. So this situation, we are now on an outside district. This gets a little bit more confusing if you follow their arrow flow here, which I'll talk about in a moment. But with same thing here, we have to have the member's name, member signature, their ID number, date of their signature, and then an effective date. We need to know the flotilla. As you can see, this is a little bit different. We have the division and flotilla number, and then we have the district to the right of that. And where are they going? We have a division and flotilla number, and then a district to the right of that. The little additional thing on this form is they're asking for the member's phone number or an email that they can be contacted during this transfer process if there was any questions whatsoever. The current flotilla commander's name will be here, and they'll sign it and mark approved, and then they'll route with the 7035. Again, you forward this through your chain of leadership forms. And I'll cover this here now. So this goes by way of the receiving flotilla commander. They're supposed to sign off on this. Then it is supposed to go backwards to the current director of auxiliary that handles their processing, and then they forward it to the receiving director of auxiliary. Well, if you're a flotilla commander at the receiving end, over here in District 054, do you really know who the director of auxiliary is in District 091? Pretty sure you might not. So this is why I suggest that I highly recommend that you route this to your own DSOHR once you've got the current flotilla commander signature on this, and let them manage this processing between the receiving flotilla commander and then through the current director of auxiliary. So hopefully everybody's kind of clear on that. I know that transferring can be really goofy when it's an out of district. And I've handled it pretty well when I'm involved with the transfer process. can get goofy if we don't get, the direct DSOHRs involved on that, who have the direct contacts with DIROPS. Because I know that many of the flotilla commanders won't have that direct contact with DIROPS. So now we're at the 7028 member profile change. Again, we go to the forms warehouse and we're getting the most current form here, and this one has been updated in 2024, so we want to use that one. This can be done, a member can make this information change to Auxdata too, and that's fine, but it might be a good idea for them to submit this form as well, just to verify what they intended to put in Auxdata 2 is correct, because it will be reviewed by the division IS person, I suspect, making sure that the change was made correctly. And that's why this form is a good backup to verify that what they intended to happen actually is happening. There are instructions on the back of the 7025 form, and page 2 is probably really your only instructions. Part of page 2, page 3, 4, and 5 are all skill bank codes. So I did not want to put that all on a PowerPoint here, but basically there's a lot of skill bank codes, and maybe the member just wants to update those, and that's fine. So what we covered here was, the critical forms, and these are extremely critical when we're at the end of the year, where we're trying to get these things done. So the 75 change of membership status, where we have the final notice for outstanding dues. And let me make a note here. I have occasionally had 7035 forms come to me at the end of the year for outstanding dues, and it's for 2 years. So double the dues that a member has not paid. But that tells me that this disenrollment did not happen the previous year. Someone did not process or send through a disenrollment to have this member disenrolled for not paying dues. We don't want to carry members through. The flotilla is being billed for that person. So if they're not paying dues, they need to be disenrolled for that year. We covered retirement from the auxiliary, transfer to another flotilla, voluntary disenrollment, and death of a member. And then we also reviewed the 7056 member transfer request. So we have transferred to another flotilla, whether it's in the same district, which is a little easier, or in a different district, which can be a little bit more difficult to manage. Again, my recommendation, have your DSOHR involved in that. They have the direct contact with DIROPS. And then we talked about the 7025 member change of status, whatever kind of information a member intended to change. All of this can be done pretty easily, and we want to get it done as efficiently and with no difficulty to help that member out. So for questions, as Dwayne mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, you can use the form on your YouTube screen below the presentation of this session. You can email us using the email on the next slide, or you can call us. We also welcome your thoughts, ideas, and suggestions. And also remember, this is a training session, so make sure you record this on your 7029 as 99D code, or you can do that yourself in Auxdata 2. And here is our contact information, our emails here. So thanks for joining us tonight. Be sure to attend our next presentation, which will be onboarding new members. And that'll be coming later this year. And I'll leave that up for a moment. And Dwayne?
No, I just had a couple quick thoughts. I was a DSOHR for a number of years, and anybody that's a DSOHR or an HR officer, knows how crazy it can get. Like Rio just said, there's sometimes the disenrollments that should have been addressed weren't addressed previously. Sometimes it's more than 2 years dues. So you've got those people you're working with, and plus the current people you're working with. So the really important thing is to remember to stay on schedule. The timeline can be your enemy if you don't stay with it. And there are some districts that don't keep processing till the end of the year, till December 31st. So if they have an earlier cutoff date, that can be a problem. So you're not going to get that. If that member's not off the books by the end of the year, your flotilla is going to have to pay the dues. And it's also possible if these are done late in the year, you'll have to pay the dues. But if the member is off the books by the end of the year, you should normally get a credit for those dues. Another thing that I learned is it's important to stay in your lane. And by that, I mean, people will be asking you, well, am I going to get a credit for that? Or, do I have to pay that? Don't, you might mention what can happen. Don't say what's going to happen when it comes to finances. Refer that person to the financial officer because it's their call what's going to really take place, and you don't want to be in the middle of it. You want to have a good relationship with the financial officers, and you can help each other out. But if you say something they can't do, that's going to upset them and make their job harder. One thing to remember, even though someone can be disenrolled, they're really not delinquent because the dues have to be paid in advance in the auxiliary. But if they don't pay their dues for next year, by the time that's required, they can be disenrolled. It's important to respect DIROCs and their work schedule because you think how busy you are with your disenrollments into the end of the year. Well, they got them coming in from every flotilla. So, be honest with them and straightforward and try to be helpful because they've got a tough job. Sometimes they get a tsunami of 7035s and it's pretty tough getting through them. I was lucky in my district that I had a great person to work with. He was actually a former district commander, and he just was very knowledgeable and very good to work with. So, I do miss working with him. Let's see. On retirements, some districts do give a retirement ID card. And while they do that, it's really nothing special. Like it can't get you access to bases. One of my things that I'm, part of my job, a big part of my job is recruiting and retention. And to recruit people and to retain people, we want to give them the best value add for the auxiliary. The proposition to be a member. What do you get out of it? Well, you get to do fun things, like HR, but people probably think of more fun things like being on operations or doing boat inspections. But everything was due as part of the mission, and it's important. So just remember that. Let's see. But I got off track. My one of my goals, and I don't know if I'm ever going to accomplish it. You notice if you're in the actual military, you can be in sometimes 2 years and get your benefits, and one of the benefits can be to use the PX or the CGX. Well, you lose that with the auxiliary. And if you're in 15 years and you're active, you're putting probably a lot of more hours in than somebody that was 2 years in the military. And I don't think it would really cost that much to give that benefit to members. And at the end of 15 years or more, probably not that many of them would use that. But it would be nice to have that as part of their package. So that's a blue sky thing that doesn't exist yet, but something that I'm hoping that can happen. I would mention death of a member. Districts could vary on the way they do it. When I did them in District 1 Northern, once we got into the process of handling the death, it went to it was a former division district commander that handled it. Once she got the word, she handled the process, and she was really great at it. Um, but part of what happened is we didn't have to do a 70-35 for that member. You know, she would just make that part of her one of the things on her list, and she would take care of that. But as Rio said, just remember, if members are leaving, efficiently get them off the books. And members don't always have to be on the books until the end of the year. If it's somebody that's not active and hasn't been active for a long time, and they really probably don't care if they go to the year, not end of the year, because they're not doing anything anyway. But we need to get them off the books, you know, as efficiently as possible. And I don't think there was anything that Rio didn't mention. Just you know, my advice is to always read the instructions, follow the instructions, ask questions. In the auxiliary, I found that people are always willing to help you. So they're not bothered if you ask them a question, or even if you ask them the same question again, if you still have questions about it. So, you know, if you kind of keep track of everything, put this stuff on your calendar. Like, one thing I've always found is if you were in the auxiliary, our memories may not be quite as good as they used to be. So when you do something, uh, your job is not done, make sure you put it on your calendar to follow up. And so it doesn't get lost, you know, because if that gets lost, then you're not only going to be doing what's going smoothly, you're going to be doing trying to fix the problem. So, you know, just be efficient as possible, have a good relationship with people, and things will go more smoothly. But again, thank you for being with us. I hope you enjoyed the session. Rio put some hard work into presenting that, and I really appreciate him doing that. So thanks for joining us, and hope to see you in our upcoming sessions. So good night.